If you think she loves you, look again. This may sting. It may piss you off, but I don't care about your feelings. I'm here to show you reality, not a pretty little picture. Reality? Love is war. And if you don't know it, you're already defeated. We were told love would save us, that it would be beautiful, redemptive, pure. We were taught through stories, through movies, through songs that one day the right woman would come along and fill in all the cracks we've been too scared to look at ourselves. Not because she's cruel, but because survival taught her to do it. Because the longer you believe she's morally superior by default, the longer you believe her affection comes without any motive. Who controls closeness? Who pulls away first? Who gives in last? These aren't gestures of affection. These are negotiations of power. The longer you stay stuck, handing over your agency in exchange for the illusion of emotional safety, and she'll accept that power. Not because she hates you, but because the system taught her to use it. She doesn't even have to ask for IT. Hand it to her like a gift. You think you're being loved, but what's actually happening is that you're being managed. And the part that hurts the most, you like it that way. You crave the comfort, the validation, the emotional anesthesia that lets you avoid facing the parts of yourself you're too scared to look at. Because once you stop needing her to be your redemption, you be left with the truth of what's underneath that need. And that's the part that really terrifies you. Not heartbreak, self-confrontation, but fear wears disguises. One of its favorites, romantic devotion. You think you're giving her everything? You think it's pure, unfiltered, brave. But look closer. You're not offering love, you're negotiating. You're saying, here's my heart will, you fix what I won't. You're not looking for a partner, you're looking for a solution. And as you're spilling out all your deepest fears, your hopes, your dreams, she's not just listening to the words. She's reading between the lines. Every vulnerability becomes a dot on the map, and she learns to navigate it with incredible skill. Because positioning herself in your mind, in your emotional core, that's how she becomes indispensable. She's calculating not in some evil, villainous way, but instinctively. Because the one who sees the game and doesn't talk about it wins in you. You've been trained to idealize her, to put her up so high on a pedestal that you cooey and even see who she really is. You look right past the strategy because you're still addicted to the fantasy. You want the muse? The good girl? The healer? The one who'll make everything okay? But what if those personas, those roles are just masks she's learned to wear? Nature didn't write fairy tales. Nature doesn't sugarcoat. Nature speaks in raw, unfiltered truth. He cuts straight through all the masks we wear, through all the comforting myths we wrap around our egos. When nature looked at love, at women, at the way we relate to one another, it wasn't sweet, it wasn't romantic, but it was honest. And that's where so many men struggle. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't love her. You love the version of her that reflects the man you wish you were. You love how she validates you, how her presence makes you feel like you matter. You call it love, but it might just be validation dressed up in something prettier. And validation isn't love. And we believed it, not because we were weak, not because we were naive, but because we never had the tools to see past the fantasy. You hand over your power willingly, and you call it vulnerability. But beneath the surface, there's a whole different story playing out. See? Women, especially in history, weren't given swords, so they learned to wield silence. They weren't handed control, so they learned to master influence. Not because they were inherently manipulative, but because they had to learn how to survive in a world that never handed them power directly. And here's the real problem. Most modern men don't see it. You confuse strategy for softness. You mistake adaptability for innocence. You think she's fragile? You think her love is unconditional? You think her tenderness means she's pure, but it's not purity. It's power refined, rehearsed, and applied with absolute precision. But what if that promise was never real in the first place? What if the love you've been chasing isn't about salvation at all but strategy? What if nature, that ancient force we often teach to either worship blindly or ignore completely, saw this whole game for what it really is? The love you think you feel, it might just be a carefully constructed illusion that keeps you emotionally obedient. While you're pouring your heart out and calling it being real, she's scanning every word you say, mapping your emotional landscape. Nietzsche didn't reveal these dynamics to shame women. He did it to challenge the stories men tell themselves about women. Nature saw this long before we did. He saw that what we often call love is really just a quiet tug-of-war for emotional territory. Here's the truth you might have been avoiding. She didn't betray you. She didn't trick you. She just stopped playing the part you wrote for her. You didn't love her, you loved your idea of her. That to love selflessly is noble. That a good man gives without hesitation, sacrifices, submits, surrenders. You thought she was surrendering, but in reality she was choosing. Every step, every word, every moment. She was choosing, always. Because she understood something that you never quite grasped. The person who sees the dynamic clearly holds the key. And now, maybe for the first time, you're starting to see it too. You remember moments, little flashes. The times she smiled and you felt warmth. But also something else. Something calculated. The way she could read your moods before you even understood them yourself. The way your emotional highs and lows were never random to her. She responded before you even asked. You thought it was intuition, and it was. But for her, intuition is survival. It's how she stays ahead. It's how she stays protected in a world that often hasn't protected her. She doesn't always have the power to confront, so she's learned how to shape. And again, this isn't about blame. It's about reality. You live in a world where love is marketed as mutual surrender but lived as mutual leverage, where vulnerability is praised on the outside, but used as currency underneath. And when you see this for what it really is, you've got two choices. You either grow up or you break. Most choose to break. They go back to the myth. They start the cycle all over again. Find a new muse. Tell themselves, this time, it's different. But it's not, because the roles haven't changed. Only the actors have. And until you stop needing her to play the part, you'll never actually meet her. You'll never meet the woman behind the mask. But what happens? When the mask is gone, what happens? When you stop chasing roles and start seeing reality. Something amazing starts to shift. You begin to realize. She was never trying to manipulate you. She wasn't trying to hurt you. She was simply responding to the only kind of power the world ever gave her access to. She was navigating a system that trained her to be indirect, to suggest rather than demand, to guide without seeming to lead. Not because she wanted to deceive you, but because this is the only way the world let her win. So the question isn't, is she ready to love you? The real question is, are you ready to love her without the myth? Are you ready to stop projecting? To stop expecting her to complete you, to stop needing her to fix what you won't look at, because only then can you actually see her, and only then can you finally see yourself. Only then does love stop being a performance and become something radical, something real. But let's pause for a second and ask, is that really love? Or is it emotional dependency, dressed up in poetry? Because underneath all the grand gestures and heartfelt declarations, isn't there often a quiet, nagging fear? A fear that says, if I don't give her everything, she won't stay. And so, you give, and give. You compromise, you adapt, you reshape yourself to be what you think she wants, just to avoid losing her. But here's the thing. That's not love, that's fear in costume. It's submission disguised as romance. And while you think you're being noble, while you think you're being vulnerable and strong and emotionally available, she feels something very different. She feels control. Not the loud kind, not the aggressive kind, but a subtle form of control that happens when someone gives themselves up and starts orbiting around your approval. You don't even notice you're doing it. But she does. Because here, SWAT nature hinted at what most people are still too afraid to admit. When love is rooted in need, it is never equal. She may never ask you to change, but you'll change anyway. She may not demand your loyalty, but you'll give it anyway. She may not need your obedience, but you'll offer it, just in case. Why? Because somewhere along the line, you convinced yourself that her acceptance equals your salvation. But here's the catch. She never asked to be your savior, she was just being herself. You turned her into a mirror, and when that mirror cracked, you didn't just lose her. You lost your sense of self, your worth, your story, because it wasn't really love you were protecting, it was the narrative. That deep internal belief that says, if she stays, I matter. If she loves me, then I'm enough. But stories aren't truth. And when the real world interrupts the fantasy, it feels like betrayal. But Niche wouldn't call it betrayal. He'd call it awakening. The lie was never that she had power. The lie was that you didn't see it. And when she stopped performing that role, when she stopped being the fantasy, you felt abandoned. You called her cold, you called her cruel. But maybe the betrayal wasn't hers. Maybe it was yours for falling in love with a projection and expecting a real person to live inside it. Nature didn't judge women. He didn't condemn them. What he did do was challenge men to grow up, to stop chasing angels, to stop worshiping muses, to stop turning women into mirrors just to avoid facing themselves. Because until you do that, you're not loving her, you're escaping from you. But if you're done blaming her, if you're ready to set down the myth and pick up a mirror, then you're finally ready to begin. Not with guilt, not with shame, but with clarity. And from that clarity, something powerful can emerge. Not the end of love, but it's evil. See, we've all been taught that love is the highest virtue. You called her gentle, but she was aware. You called her nurturing, but she was strategic. If you've made it this far, you're probably starting to feel the weight of what's being said. And that's good, because discomfort, when it hits the right nerve, is often the beginning of real transformation. You were taught to chase love like it was the ultimate achievement task. If finding the one would fix everything, that's when the illusion starts to fall apart. That's when the pain hits, not because you lost her, but because you lost the story she was holding up for you. About recognizing the human being in front of you, not a savior, not a fantasy, not a symbol of your worth, just a person. And from that place, everything changes. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop clinging. You start choosing. You stop demanding. You start relating. Because now you're not looking for a mirror. You're not looking for permission to feel whole. You're looking for connection, honest, mutual, equal. And she'll feel it. She knows. Because for maybe the first time, you're no longer afraid of her power. You respect it. You don't need to control it. You don't need to surrender to it. You simply acknowledge it as something she had to learn, just like you're learning now. That's when love stops being leverage. It stops being a strategy. It stops being a performance, and it becomes what it was always meant to be. A meeting of two people who are trying to fix each other, or fix themselves through each other. Just two people, choosing, daily. And when that story breaks, you don't just feel reject, you feel erased. You were chasing proof that you mattered. But none of that is her job. It's yours. And when you do, you won't need her to validate you anymore. You'll just love her for who she actually is. Not for how she makes you feel. Not for the way she reflects your dreams. But for the reality of her. Flawed. Complicated. Powerful. Human. That's where the revolution starts. And if something in you shifted just now, even a little, then share this message. Like it. Subscribe to the channel. Not because it's entertainment, but because you are tired of illusions. Tired of pretending. Tired of playing a role you didn't write, and because you're ready finality, see things as they are. Not to give up on love, but to let it grow up with you. But here's what Nietzsche, and Nietzsche herself, would say. That collapse, that emotional unraveling, it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the crack in the illusion that lets something real get in. Because when you stop needing someone to complete you, you finally get to ask yourself a deeper question. What do I look like without the story? And the answer won't be found in another relationship. It won't come from another romantic rescue mission. It comes from learning to sit with yourself. With your fear, with your emptiness, with your need, not to shame it, not to fix it, but to understand it. Because once you stop needing someone to complete you, you're finally free to love someone fully without agenda, without performance, without fear. And that kind of love, that's the kind that transforms, not just your relationships, but your life. As if being chosen by the right person would finally make you enough. But what if love isn't a reward? What if it's a mirror? And what if the love you've been giving isn't as noble as you thought? Because here's something that's hard to admit. Most of what we call love isn't really love. It's a transaction. It's a hidden deal that goes, I'll give you my heart, my loyalty, my everything as long as you keep making me feel like I matter. And we dress that up in pretty language. We call it romance. We call it devotion. But if you peeled it back, you'd find something a lot simpler underneath. Fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unseen. Fear of facing yourself without a buffer. And so, without realizing it, you hand over parts of yourself piece by piece, not because she asks, but because you think it's the price of keeping her. You stop speaking up. You stop setting boundaries. You stop pursuing what you want. You make yourself smaller, more agreeable, more safe, and you call that love. But it's not love, it's avoidance. And she sees it whether she says it or not. She feels it. The weight of your unspoken expectations, the quiet pressure to be everything for you, to be your comfort, your redemption, your emotional anchor. But she never asked for that role. You cast her in it, and when she stops playing it, when she pulls back or acts differently, or refuses to carry the burden of your identity, it's the kind of love that isn't about getting, but about seeing. So here's the final truth. This whole time, you weren't chasing her. You were chasing safety. You were chasing peace,